C-Bus.
We're being invaded. Yeah. Come here. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Hey, it's Gary again. Hey, I want to make a quick video because 3 weeks ago I went and treated all my lawns with their summer application, and they're all looking pretty good because here in Ohio we've had additional rainfall that we normally don't get in August. So about the biggest thing I saw was sort of an influx on fungus type related diseases happening. I had to take care of a few of those. As far as brownness in the lawns, everything was looking pretty good. So you know, that was 3 weeks ago. You know, some of them were 2 weeks ago, and I did a follow-up with some of the customers, and we treated it with fungicide. They said the lawn was looking much better. A week later, I talked to, for instance, the same customer, and he said now that he had brown patches in the lawn, really bad. And I said, well, let me come and look. That was on Friday. On Saturday, I got a couple more emails and voicemails. Sunday, we got a few more, so they're starting to pour in. And of course, almost going into a real kind of panic mode here because what's going on? Well, I had some colleagues call me, find out, you know, if they were getting phone calls also. They verified what I had found out myself when I went out and looked at the yard on Sunday. So here's what I found out. This is one of the lawns that we have, and as of 1 week ago, this lawn looked nearly perfect. Sits right on the back of a golf course, and it's looking really good. But now you can see it. So let's take a closer look, show you what's going on. So he sent me an email yesterday. Today's Monday, around noon, and I'm out here, and he said that he noticed this only mid last week. So I said, when's the first you noticed it? He said, well, not more than a week. He thinks about 4 or 5 days. So the lawn went from looking like this to sort of looking like that in about 4 days. So you wonder what the problem is here. And it's pretty easy to identify what this situation is. The problem is you have to identify it quickly, because when it first starts, it might only be a little bit of brown patch like this, just a little bit of browning in what's more or less a good looking lawn. And when it happens in the middle of August, you know, that's normally not concerning because August is a hot month. A lot of times it's dry, so you normally get some browning. This lawn, you know, does not have irrigation. And generally, in August, you know, through August, late July, August, early September, it's hot and dry in Ohio. So, you know, it's normal that the lawn will brown out. This year, actually, we've had uncommon rainfall. So let's get to how we find this problem. First of all, whenever I'm looking at a brown patch and I'm looking for what I think is an insect-related problem, I won't look normally right in the middle of the dead patch. I'll usually look to the outside edge of that. And that's because when insects eat, they usually eat and then they sort of move across and they eat and eat. So I'll look to the edge. So first thing I'll do is take a little shovel or my hands, and I would dig through the area to see what I see. And you can see I've dug in here. I've loosened up the soil, and as I loosen the soil, I can see something right in there, see? And as I get closer in here and get him out, I can tell that that's a armyworm. And so it's actually a small one. So if we look at another spot right over here that I loosened up, and sometimes you can just grab the sod and sort of pull it back. See the culprit, try to find the problem. See if we can find any more in here. There's one right there. You can see him. So that's an armyworm. When you grab them like this, I always like to curl up. But you can sort of see that they're sort of a dark green, gray color, and they have sort of a darker green or black stripe that goes through them. So you know, that's one way that you can find them, is just try to tear a little bit of the sod back. Now, they like to live in about the bottom inch of the grass. So these guys here are mostly night feeders. Now, you'll see that they'll eat a lot very quickly, and they'll destroy a yard really quick. They prefer bent grass. They also like bluegrass, but they'll eat fescue too. You can see a lot of areas here where he had them. For instance, here's a good example. Most of this area is bent grass that's coming in from the golf course, but right in the center there, you can see a patch of bluegrass because, you know, they like the bent grass a lot better. Now I see the same similar situation where there is no bent grass. They'll eat the bluegrass and they'll leave fescue. So over here you can see they've eaten everything and they left a clump of fescue right here in the middle. Now let's take a look at the area where they've already killed almost all the grass. And if we dig up in here, you might find stuff like this. Here's one of the guys right there. And right here, you can see another interesting element. Here and here. Okay. There's actually a grub worm. But you can see these guys in here. Another little bit of a grub worm right there. So that's what you're looking for to identify these guys. Normally I just look in the thatch layer, or really close to the thatch layer, because they like to climb around in the base of the grass. And there is another test that you can do. I find this is the quickest way, just with the shovel, dig, try to locate them where you suspect them. The other thing you can do is this right here. And, you know, this is not actually Sprite. What I've done, I've took some dish soap, about a tablespoon of dish soap, and mixed it with water. And then we're going to go ahead and just dump that in this area. And then we're going to wait. You want to saturate the area good. Now we're going to saturate the area pretty good with some dish soap and some water. And then we're going to give it a little bit of time. We're going to come back and check to see what we see. I see an earthworm coming out. There's another earthworm. That's a good thing. You want earthworms in your grass. So as you can see, this spot here is not one of the worst spots in the lawn. It's actually a mild spot that's just barely starting to turn brown. So let's give it a few minutes and we'll take another look. So the bad news is the armyworms, they'll eat your grass really quickly. A period of a week, a lot can change. So early diagnosis is key. Unfortunately, we don't go to a customer's house every week. Usually in this business, I'm there every 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that, depending on the schedule and what we're doing, time of year and such. So it's kind of a tough position it puts us in, because by the time you realize the problem, it's usually a big problem. You want to minimize how much repair seeding you do. The good news is that once you identify them, you can take care of them and kill them actually usually pretty quickly. You'll look for a chemical that we'll put on something like this here, and this is Avalon. The main ingredient in Avalon insecticide is bifenthrin. So you can see right there, 7.9% bifenthrin. You can also, there's other brand names for that same chemical, like one of them is Wisdom that you can use. So generally they recommend somewhere in the neighborhood of a ½ ounce to 1 fluid ounce per 1,000 square foot if you're trying to figure out your mix rate. So that's what we use to kill these guys. And we can kill them, but the problem is we have to try to get there soon enough that they don't kill the yard first. So in moderate situations, like where I poured the dish soap mix, a lot of times that area will recover by itself. There's enough greenery left in there, enough root system that it'll recover on its own. It won't need any additional seeding or maybe aeration and overseeding, and not something aggressive and expensive like slice seeding. A lot of times maybe just some fertilizer and some aeration and overseeding will recover. So let me go wash my hands, because when I touched that container, I wasn't wearing gloves. And then we're going to go take a look at the area where I poured the solution and see if we see anything. There we go. I get talking to you guys on camera and not paying as much attention as I should there. Generally, you don't want to handle any chemicals without gloves on. Luckily, I wasn't really handling the chemical, but there could be residual on the outside of the container. So let's go see what our spot looks like. So let's go back and look at that spot. Got our hands cleaned off. Okay, now coming back up on the spot, what do we see here? I see an earthworm. I don't see a ton of them here. What's that? A little spider. Normally you'll find several of them, but here's one sort of hiding in there. Well, not a very productive test because we only found one. But we know that they're here. Most of the time I do prefer just digging and looking. But you can use soapy water, and occasionally, most of the time, it actually, if you have a bad infestation like this, it'll bring them to the top. So I was coming back to put my application sheet on their door and the sign in the yard, and I noticed right here on the sidewalk you can see one of these guys. He's just walking around in plain daylight. So you know, these things are normally you know, nighttime feeders primarily, but sometimes if you have a lot of them, you'll catch them out in daylight like this and on the sidewalk or the driveway. He's looking for something, he don't know where to go. So you're not going anywhere now. So as they feed and mature, those guys will turn into moths. So I'm often asked, you know, how did they get in my yard? Well, they can fly. So they lay thousands of eggs. So, you know, they come, the reason they're called army ants, because they come in an army and they feast like one, and they'll ruin your yard pretty quick. So hopefully that's helped you out some to identify if you've got an armyworm problem, or a lot of times you can use that same technique to pinpoint different types of insects. So you know, you can find that if you dig underneath the root system a little bit. You can find grubs that way. You can also locate other things if you look really close. Sometimes if they're cinch bugs, you can find cinch bugs, but just dig around, examine what you find. and you might see what your problem is. Otherwise, in the summer, these things can go unnoticed because a lot of insects are active in the hot and usually dry parts of the year. In that situation, sometimes it's weeks or a month or so before you even know there's a problem. But, you know, quick identification, that way you can get a quick remedy on it's the answer to the problem. So keep watching my videos and subscribe, and I'm going to try to keep these customers' yards as best as I can. So let me get back to work. Talk to you soon.